Okay, cool. Okay, with 3ds Max open now, try to do like a split screen thing. Yeah. So drag 3ds Max to one side and let it snap. Drag the stream to the other side and let it snap. And try to follow along. Yeah. And if this method is not working, please just tell me and I'll try to change and adapt how I'm going around this. Okay, so the first thing, like stated on the miscellaneous sheet, is for us to understand where the unit setup is. Yeah. On the interface page, you're gonna see we have our specific menus. So that's the top bit, which would generally be called the toolbar. But we're going to call this the menu, where it has file, edit, tools, group, view, create, modifiers, animation, graph editors, rendering, civil view, customize, scripting, interactive, content, Arnold, and help. Now, a lot of things can be done here, like the create section here where it says view, create, modifiers. The create, this is where we'll be starting most of our models, standard primitives. Then we have the boxes. What you realize is everything that you hover over will have a drop down. Everything that you hover over will have a drop down. If you hover over for at least a second, you'll see the drop down pop up. And sometimes if you hover over the icons, you'll also see that the icons, the name and the shortcuts, like the F5s or the Z, the keyboard shortcuts, will pop up and give you more information. Some of the other icons actually have videos within them that can actually show you specifically how they work. Okay, so let's just jump in and do the first thing. The first thing that we want to do is go to customize. Then we need to go down to unit setup. We're going to click unit setup, and then we're going to make sure that our metrics is set to centimeters. And then we're going to go to system unit setup, and we're going to make sure that is one scale and set to centimeters as well. Now mine is already saved from the last time I've used it, but yours might be different. So as long as those say centimeters, you're good. Even if it does save, it's always good to check multiple times when you start up, just to make sure. Okay, then we have our main menu where you have your undo and redo. The shortcut for undo is Control Z and redo is Control Y. I don't know why this is, but it's just the way it is, but you can also have them here. And we also have a bunch of other options. One of the main ones we're going to be using is snap and snap rotation. We also have our mirror and align tools, that's aligning things to a specific location. We also have our materials editor, and you can see when I hover over, you can see the shortcut. So M is the shortcut for material editor. And then the main thing here is the render setup. Okay, so let's click the render setup. So I'm going to click it, and you're going to see a menu pop up. This is going to be very important for us viewing our materials, viewing our finished scene and setting up the window size and how we save our project. The next thing that we want to do is introduce the ribbon menu. So that's underneath the toolbar. We have a ribbon. So you're going to see modeling, freeform, selection, object paint, and populate. Okay, but you're going to say, okay, there's not much going on there. If we click the white button arrow down, show full ribbon, you can see it will show full ribbon. And then once we have a model within our within our scene, you'll see that this ribbon will populate with things to do. Okay, underneath now we have our viewport. As you can see, we have our top, front, left, and perspective. And you realize the menu that I'm clicking on out of these four, it will highlight with a mustard type of color. And to make one of these windows full, you do use Alt and W. So Alt and W to click to enlarge the window, Alt and W to shrink the window. Yeah. Okay, now the mouse. Once you press the middle mouse down, you have a panning section. Yeah, so you can pan around, and then if you want to zoom in, you roll the mouse forward. To zoom out, you roll the mouse back. Yes. If for any reason you lose that grid, you can press Z and it will pop back into place. If you press also G, the grid will disappear. I don't know why you would do that. Maybe you're a professional, but the G will also bring the menu back. Okay, the other important menu is the command panel. The command panel has everything that you can do on the toolbar. It's just organized in a different way. So we're gonna have our standard area here where you can also create your box spheres and such. You have your modify list, which once we have a box in there, you see the modify list will populate. You have your hierarchy, which you can control your pivot points and such. Motion, which will populate with animation. And then we have the subsidiary stuff, which will come into play later on. Okay, underneath that, underneath our view is we have the timeline. So this is important for when we begin animation. And you have to the right side at the bottom, you have your play, rewind and stuff, and your auto keys. But most importantly is the time configuration underneath the jump forward button. If we click the time configuration, what you'll notice is that our frame rate is set to NTSC. Now NTSC works in 30 frames per second, but as we're in England, let's switch it to PAL, which is 25 frames a second. And you can see our animation end time has dropped to 83. We can change that back to 100, and let's press OK. Okay, so those are the main interfaces. Let's try and throw something on the screen. Okay, so the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to create standard primitives, and then I'm gonna click on the box. Now I'm gonna left click down in perspective and drag, release, drag up, and then click again, and you can see I've created a box. I'm also gonna Alt W my screen to make it large, so I'm in my perspective view. And the next thing I want to do is I've got a box on the screen, but I can't see where my edges are. I can see that there's highlights and stuff, but I don't know exactly where my edges are. And how we're gonna do this is by pressing F4. So I've pressed F4 and you can see my edge faces are now visible. Okay, so what you notice on the side of our command panel is that we have our parameters, sorry. We have our length, width, height. We have our length segments, the width segments, and the height segments. Okay, first of all, I'm just gonna turn these to 30 centimeters a piece. Yep, and you can see it shrink on site. So I've turned the length, width, and height to 30. And the segments I'm going to increase just by 3 and just at one at a time so you can see what's happening. So I have a box with 9 segments on each side. And then the main keys that we're going to be using, or transitional keys, are going to be move, rotate, and scale. Now the shortcut for these on the keyboard is W, E, and R. So that's W for move, E for rotate, and R for scale. Okay, so what we have here is just a standard box. It's not actually a polygon yet. How we change this to get our menu up in the command panel is by right clicking. Another menu will pop up. This time it's only 2. Usually it's 4. So if you hear me say quad menu, that's when you right click to open up the quad menu, and then a bunch of different options will pop up. Now This also has secondary value. If you hold down Alt or Control, you get different menus that pop up also. But what we want to do is we want to go down to the bottom where it says convert to, and we want to convert to editable poly. We don't want a mesh, we want editable poly. And you realize that our command panel has snapped over to the modify area. We have an editable poly, and then we have some selections. Yep. Now the object selections are vertices or vertex. We have edges, we have borders, which are kind of unique in some way, or it's referred to uniquely in 3ds Max. We have our basic polygon, and then we have our elements. Okay, so at the bottom of our screen, next to the play menu, you can see we have our X and the coordinates, the Y and the coordinates, and the Z and the coordinates. Now these are the coordinates mapped from the hierarchy of our axes. Yeah, and you can see that we have an axis. Actually, did I say press W? Press W while your box is selected, and then you'll see that the move axis will pop up, and you can see that we have our Y, we have Z, and we have X. Okay, now rotation. So rotation and navigation within 3ds Max. Like I said before, if you hold down the middle mouse roller button, you can pan. So you can pan around your screen. If you roll the mouse up and down, you can zoom in and out. There are also other ways, but we're just going to keep to the standard one for now. Also, if you hold Alt on the keyboard, you can rotate around your model. Yes? Like I said, if your model seems to have disappeared, all you need to do is not have anything selected, press Z, and it will pop back right in front of you. Okay, on our viewport panel, you're going to notice at the top there is a type of, I don't know how to call it, northeast, south and west thing going on, where you can see what area you're looking of the screen at. Yep, and what we want to be doing is when we begin our modeling, always start from the front. So you have to see the front in that cube that's in the top right. Yeah, that way we know we're looking in the right section. Now this is not the front as front is, this is the front in our perspective. Okay, so with my box selected, X, you're gonna read. Okay, what the axis is called a Cartesian coordinate system. Now, if I haven't written this down, I will reinforce this a couple more times, because when we do our research on 3D, we are gonna need to do a lot of writing about that. Yeah. So our Cartesian coordinate system, we have X. X always in 3ds Max always moves left to right. We have Y, which moves back and forward in our scene, and we have Z, which moves up and down. Now, when creating anything or modeling or manipulating anything, please, you're beginners, I want you to move in one direction. So if I say move your box in the X-axis, don't just select anywhere on the box or anywhere on the screen. I want you to hover over the actual X arrow, the red, wait for it to highlight. It will do it automatically. Once it's highlighted, then you can move in that direction. Yes, and only that direction. So if your hand fuddles up or something's on the table, it's not gonna splurge around in all different forms. It's only gonna move in that direction. Same with all the others. If I highlight only the Z, it's only going to move up and down. Even if I move my mouse left and right, it will only move up and down. Okay, and same with the Y. Now you can do double if you click on the box between the Z and the X. Now you can move it in a 2D type of plane area. And same with the other one. Okay, now as I was saying before, down below next to our play section, we have the x coordinates, y coordinates, and z coordinates. Now, the center of our 3ds Max works within the coordinate system, which means the center of the universe is 0 for x, 0 for y, and 0 for z. So if I right click the up and down arrow, you'll notice that it will snap to 0, and snap to 0. Load up 3ds Max 2019, yeah? So now my box is completely in the middle of our universe, yes? Now this can go out to more or less infinity, but our box is completely in the middle of our universe due to its anchor point being at 0, 0, 0. Yeah? Okay, now if you understand that, let's move on. Our vertices. Now the vertices can be controlled by the shortcut 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if I press 1, I don't like using these shortcuts. I most likely never will. I always do everything visually. If I press 1, it will go into the vertices. Okay, let's play and see what the vertices does. So you notice that these blue dots have popped up on your screen, and these are going to control each of the separate polygons. So if I click the edge of the polygon, just one, I'm just going to click, you can see that I can move this out and pull it. So what you need to do is you need to imagine that this polygon that you're creating is kind of like Play-Doh. You can pull, stretch, you can grow, you can add onto it, you can manipulate, you can cut, and form whatever it is that you need to form. Okay, now you can also select multiple by what I call marquee select. Just like in Photoshop where you have the selection tool, you can drag and create this, what's it called, rectangular selection region, yes? So up here at the top, you can see we can change on the icon, the dotted square icon at the top, rectangular selection region. You can select it, hold down, and you can see we have multiple different selections. We have a circle, and it will select in the circle range. We have, I don't even know what this is. Oh, this is a point, so you can click on point like a magnet type thing, and a bunch of others. But I always leave it on the square. You don't need more than a square. So if for some reason your selection region has changed, that is how you do it, yes? Also, be careful, nearly every single key has some form of shortcut. So don't randomly press all the keys on your keyboard unless you're just experimenting. If you're actually doing work and you haven't saved it, be careful what you're pressing. There's only a certain number of undos that you can do, and that is, I think, limited to 20. We can change this by going to customize, preference, files. Is it files? Oh, okay. In files we have auto back. The auto, which I'll talk about in a second. Okay, so in general we have our scene undo, and it's limited to 20. Now, if you've done more than 20 mistakes, that means you weren't aware of what you were actually doing to begin with. And depending on what type of modifiers that you will apply and the technical work that you will do within 3ds Max, you don't want to be making too much mistakes and then having to go back. It's better you just start again, or cut where you've made the mistake and try to rebuild. Okay, so we can increase the number of undos. I wouldn't go more than 50, but that can be changed, and then you just press OK to do that. Also, in the file, you'll see that we have our auto back, and it's enabled. Mine is enabled to 3 saves every 5 minutes, and the folder where it auto backs to is, if we click and open a folder, we have documents, and then we have 3ds Max, and then we have autoback, and the autoback files will save in here. and they will overwrite themselves every 5 minutes. Now um, sometimes your file can start to get large. It won't happen now, but later on your file can get extremely large, and the program might freeze or stutter. You can change the time frame it takes for the auto back to happen to 10 minutes or even shorter, but sometimes these computers can go wrong. Sometimes the program can crash. It shouldn't, but sometimes it can, especially if you're doing things that the computer that it's not meant to. So you're the one making a mistake and it doesn't understand, it will close, crash, or create a bug and crash. So sometimes it's good to have the auto back there if you can't remember to manually save it yourself. Okay. Um, so yes, like I was saying, we can select, um, and it's best to like I said, I keep the rectangular select because I can rotate around my model and select specific areas that I want. So if I select alongside my cube, I can then move and rotate around it and then move it in the exact position I want my selection to move in. Another thing is, like I was stating before, you have top view, perspective, left and right views. So if I want to go to perspective view, I press the P button. If I want to go to the top view, I press the T button. If I want to go to the front view, I press the front button. You see how it works? Whatever view you want to look at, you press the according key to get there. Okay, and so when I press the T, it went to the wireframe mode. So we can also change the graphical representation within 3ds Max. At the top, you'll see there are some small menus here, just in brackets. Each one of these has its own thing going. If you right click them, you can see that I have a wireframe override on my top. I can change this to default shading, and then again press F4 to enable edge faces, or I can right click the edge face. Well, I can right click whatever it says, so that says default shading, and then click on the edge face down there. So all of these are right click, and all of these where it says standard, there's right click, but we're not going to get into these right now. Okay. The next tool is the edge tool. Now the edge is exactly what it sounds like. It selects the edge. It selects the points between the two vertices. So you can move and manipulate the whole edge or a single edge. And if you want to select more than one edge, you hold the control button. So I'm going to select one edge. I'm going to hold control and then select the other one. And you can see that it multiplies, not multiplies, it adds it to your selection. Yep. So you can select multiple edges like that. Also, this is a shortcut. If you double click, it will select the complete rectangular form. So if you double click, it will select, as long as the line is not interrupted or broken, it will select the complete area. Yeah. And then you can use this to model a bit more efficiently. Okay, the next also, so let me double click this. I'm going to press R for scale, and I can scale it out and use all the other tools. E for rotation, and I can rotate it. And the rotation and scale works exactly the same way as the move. If you highlight, if you hover over the X, Y, or Z, it will move in that specific location. If you just randomly select anywhere, you're just moving anywhere with no specific narrative for the line to follow. Okay, the next tool along is the border tool. Now this tool is specific. You'll think that, okay, it's not really doing much, I can't select anything, because the border tool works on gaps. So if I select my polygon tool, that's the one over, and I select one polygon and press the delete key, I've deleted that polygon. Now this is where the border comes into play. So I now can select, and it will select that gap, and it will select the whole ring of that border regardless of the line being broken or not. And then we can manipulate and do things in this fashion as well. Yeah, and we'll get more into the border later. Back to the polygon. The polygon is exactly as it does. You can select multiple by clicking, by holding Control, or you can. Will this work? If you hold, if you just say you select one polygon, and then hold the Shift key and select another polygon right next to it, to the left or right, it will also wrap around. Yes, it will wrap around, so you can use this to your advantage to have specific knots or whatever that needs to happen. Okay, and then finally we have our element. Now the element will select the whole object. Now how this works particularly is, if so, let's come off of element. I'm gonna go to move, so you can also, you see here, I don't have to just press W, E or R for move, rotate and scale. I can right click and in the quad menu select move, rotate or scale from nearly from the transform area. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hold shift and then move in the X axis, and then what this does, it duplicates, it creates a clone. Now this clone, you will see that you have copy, instance and reference, and what this is making a copy will just double the information there, which means it doubles the memory, visual capacity, whatever it needs. Instance and a reference will just create instance will create something, but the main bulk of the information is from the original, and the reference is just a facade. It's like a ghost object. If you move one edge or vertice in the original object, the reference will also copy it, but the instance will have its own movement in there, but we'll get more into that later. So I'm gonna copy. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is, with my original, I am going to right click, go to the top left quad menu, go to attach. I'm going to attach that object now, and then right click to come off. Now what you'll realize a lot of the time is, when you implement something new, when you implement a new function or task for the computer to do, usually you have to right click to say I am finished. Otherwise it is going to be left on and you'll be adding or duplicating, multiplying or doing whatever. Okay, so when I move, you'll see that both of them are moving now. So basically it's one object. So if you imagine that you have a clock and you have the hands, you have multiple different objects combined together into one. If I select the element now, I can select them individually, move, manipulate, place them in, and such and such. Yeah. When I come off of the element, it will move and retain the modifications that I've completed. Okay, let's just quickly jump on and show you a tiny bit about the animation. Now you'll realize at the bottom we have our like a key slider. So it says from 0 to 100, and when you slide this, this is you scrubbing through animation. Now the shortcut to get into animation mode is N, and when you press that, you're gonna see that there's a wraparound, a red wraparound of the viewport and on the timeline. This means you're in animation mode. That means anytime you do something, it's gonna be recording. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna move my timeline forward to 10 or whatever. It doesn't really matter. And also, even though the shortcut is N, if you look down to the bottom, you're gonna see like a plus and a key. Next to it has auto key. If you press that, it does the exact same function. So I'm gonna move the polygon over in any direction, it doesn't matter. And what you notice is that there are two keys now, one on 0 and one on 10. And then when you scrub, you can see that it's jumping back and forth. Okay, Now we're gonna actually move on to modeling. Okay, so to get rid of this scene, I'm gonna go to File, Reset. It's gonna ask me, do I want to save? I'm gonna press no. Do you really want to reset? Yes. And then it's reset. Yeah, so everything has been wiped from there. Okay, so let's go through. If you skip to the second page where you can see the rendered table, chair, and teapot, and you see there are bullet points that say in what the steps that we need to take. Okay, the first thing that we need to do is we need to go to render setup. So our render setup, or all of our rendering menus, are going to be the teapots. So this is Max's way of representing a renderer, is showing by teapot. So any of these is to do with rendering. You don't want to be pressing the render to cloud button. Leave that. That will change your settings. What we're going to do is press the render and the teapot and the cog, which is render setup. Shortcut is F10. And then we want to scroll down to where it says area to render. Oh, sorry, output size. Sorry. So where it says custom, we're going to we're going to left click and go down to HD TV video. Once we've changed it to HD TV video, we have a selection of presets, and we're going to change it to 1280 by 720. Okay, once that is done, we're just going to press X to close that window. I'm going to make sure that my units are set to centimeters. So I'm going to go to customize, unit setup, and just check that my metrics and my unit scale are set to centimeters, which they are. And then I'm going to begin. So the first thing I want to do is go to create standard primitive box. In the menu, in the perspective menu, I want to look where my mouse is. I want to drag, click, while holding down, drag out. It doesn't matter about the sizes right now because we're going to modify them. And then I'm going to let go, and then we're going to go into the rise, the Z axis. Yep. I'm going to press Alt and W to enlarge my perspective view. And then I want to input the settings which I've placed in this tutorial. So the length is going to be 40 centimeters. The width is going to be 60 centimeters. And the height is going to be 1 centimeter. The length segment is going to be 3. The width segment is going to be 3, and the height we're going to leave at 1. Now, like I said before, we can press F4, that's the shortcut to show your edge faces, or we can right click where it says default shading and go to edge faces. One second. Okay, so sorry, we have our length and we have our segments imported. Now what I want to do is press the W key, which is the move, or you can right click and go to move, and just make sure that our potential table is going to be in the center of our universe. So what I'm going to do is right click on the X, Y, and Z to make sure that it's in the middle, and then I'm going to convert it to an editable poly. So I'm going to right click, convert to editable poly. Okay, so the first thing that we want to do is we want to change. This is going to be the top of our table, but we don't want to just make our table like a Lego piece. We don't want to have separated um, legs or bits, just things stuck together. So we need to manipulate our box here or our edges to fit what we need. So the way we're going to do this is I'm going to select the vertex, and then I'm going to marquee select and drag it down from the top and just select my middle two. Now if I go to this, now what I can do is I could move these manually in the x-axis, but I can also go to scale and scale them in the x so that they're exactly the same. Yeah, so I've scaled mine out, so I've selected the middle two and then scaled them out. Now I'm going to use the Alt key and rotate around to look at it from the left view, and then I'm going to do the same. I'm going to select from the top only the middle sections, and then I'm going to marquee select the middle two, and then in the Y I'm going to pull out again. And what you'll realize is that we have areas that we can extrude legs. Once I've gone through this bit, I will come around and help, but you can't do that because it's like right next to you. Yes. Okay. So now we have our main area set out for us. What I'm going to do is make sure that our vertex is not selected. I'm going to go to move, W or right click, either way, it doesn't matter. And in the Z axis, I'm going to pull my table up a bit. It doesn't matter how much we do it for now. Mine is moved up about 20 in the Z axis. And then what I'm going to do is select the polygon tool. The shortcut is 4. I'm going to rotate to underneath the table, and then I'm going to select the corners that we just created. So I'm going to select one, hold control, select the second one, the third, and the fourth. Now we're going to start to implement or use our editable poly functions here. The main one that you'll mostly be using is extrude. So we're going to do this manually. I'm going to show you both ways actually. So I'm going to click the extrude button, and then if I hover over, you can see what I've selected, the mouse will change. Yep. So I'm going to hover over and then pull up, and you can see table legs are coming down. Yep. We can always right click and move these into places and manipulate them later. Okay. So now we've created table legs out of this. The second thing that I want to do is, and this is where the other shortcut comes into play, is I'm going to select one edge, hold shift, and then select the next bit, and then to the left or right, and then you can see that it's wrapped around. Okay, now we're going to use extrude again, but instead of pressing the extrude button, we're going to press the extrude menu, the settings, that's right next to it. Yeah. Okay, you can see in the middle that our table has jumped sideways and it looks so funky. Something has gone wrong, and we've got a menu, a pop-up menu in the middle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the pop-up menu and go to local. and you can see that it's changed to the local area of our table, and we can scale down how much the pop out happens. Yeah, so I'm gonna go down to just say 1.5, and we can type this in or we can use the scale, and then you want to press the tick button to say okay. Yeah, so now we have a little lip on our table. Okay, so what I'm gonna do now is I am gonna pause for a second and just come around and check to see that everybody is getting on with what is they're meant to be getting on with, and I'll be back in 5 minutes. Okay, yeah, at some point you're gonna need to go forward, skip forward in the video for like 10 minutes as I was walking around. Um, okay, so now we're gonna move on to the chair. Okay, this is gonna go more or less similar, but utilizing more different techniques. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is create another box. I don't really care about the size here because we're going to modify it in the parameters, and I have put 20, 21, and it's going to be the same 331. And then I'm going to convert this to editable poly. Going to pick this up, and what I'm going to do, I don't actually, it does say here, I want to go into isolation mode. So isolation mode will just hide the other table. It's not actually hiding, but it will hide the other table or just get rid of it from our viewport. So that's Alt and Q. Okay, let me center that. Okay. And what I want to do here is the exact same thing I've done with the table. So I'm going to select, right click, scale out. Do the same. I'm going to go a bit faster here. And then it says here Separate like your lines like you did with the table. Select the edges going across, so I'm going to select the edge mode, select the edges going across, that's all of them, and then I want to go to connect. In connect I want 2 lines, and I'm going to push it up to 88 or whatever, doesn't matter, yours might be different. Press OK. Whoops, my bad. Do the same thing across, and you'll realize that my 2 and 88 are exactly the same. Okay, now what I want to do here is select the polygon tool, that's number 4, and then I'm going to use the control to select. Now if for some reason I made a wrong selection, let's say I selected here, the way how to get rid of your selection or to undo that selection is you could press undo, but depending on how much you've done, you can hold the Alt button and that will minus your selection. Yeah, that will minus whatever it is you're selected rather than doing undo. Okay, so what I'm going to do is click on the extrude now, then I'm going to extrude down. Yeah. Okay. Okay, here's another method I'm showing you guys. Now this is not how I would normally do it, but we're doing it here to show you the actual tool. So I'm gonna select the underneath of the chair, and then I'm gonna hold shift, and in the scale in the X and Y I'm gonna scale down to like the size of the leg. I want it to be its own element, so I'm gonna put clone to object, just put L for leg, press OK, and then to deselect what I have selected, what I'm gonna do is come to the object settings, select off, and then when I hover over the leg you'll see it highlight, and now I can move it into place. So let me change the color of this. So also you can change the color of your polygons where it's and rename at any point. Okay, now I have the editable poly here. I'm gonna select the polygon. This is the leg. I'm gonna go to extrude, then I'm gonna extrude the leg down. So look here, so depending on where your object is, we know where the ground plane is, that's at 0 0. With that selected, I can just right click the Z and it will snap directly to the floor rather than me guessing where the floor actually is. What I can also do is add more segments in here using the connect tool, exactly like we did with the chair base. So I'm going to select the edges. I'm going to select along my thick chair leg. I'm going to click the connect settings. This isn't in the tutorial, by the way. I'm going to decrease the size. I'm going to put it back to 0. And then I'm going to put the number up to, say, 4 or 5. Now with these selected, I'm going to go to the vertice. Then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to slightly give these a bend. Just to put some shape in it. So I'm using a marquee select just to give it some shape. Tiny bit of shape. Okay. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to use the shift key to shift so select the leg, use the shift key to pull sideways to create another leg, and it's going to say I want it as a copy. Yes. Okay, now we could do exactly the same for the back. but I'm not going to use the shift key. I'm going to show you another key. So with both legs selected, I'm going to come up to our toolbar where it says mirror. Then I'm going to click the mirror tool. A new window is going to pop up and it says where do you want it to mirror. I'm going to say I want it to mirror in the y-axis, and then I want to offset it. Oops, sorry, I want to copy, sorry, and then offset. Oops, let's jump in. Yeah, Y. Okay. And if you go too forward a bit too much, you can always just tuck it back a bit. Nice in there. Okay, now to make the back of the chair, what I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna attach these two, so they're one object. So right click, attach. This is the same tool we used before, and then I'm gonna select the second pair, and make sure you right click to finish the function. Then I'm gonna use the border because these two are open, so I can select, marquee select both of them. They've got the border. And I'm going to show you another tool here, or it's the same tool we use to clone. We can also use it to extrude along an open gap. So what I'm going to do is hold shift and then drag up, and you can see that we've created there's like holes here. Corbin. Oh, are you doing what you're supposed to be doing, Corbin? Do what you're supposed to be doing, yeah? Once you finish what you're supposed to be doing, yes, and upload it to Sketchfab, then you can do what you want to do, yeah? Okay, good. Okay, so what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna hold shift again and extrude up. So we're gonna extrude up slightly here. And then the second thing we're gonna do is we're gonna use cap. So this will close any gap with holes in, yeah? So you can see that I've capped the top. Okay, we're going to use the connect again. So I'm going to marquee select using the edge, the top of the chair, and we want to create some backing for the chair. So I'm going to click the connect settings, and we're going to count that's 1 and that's 2. Actually, let's do them individually so we can control the size. So this one is going to be the top. I want it to be slightly thicker. I'm going to press OK. We're going to move that up. And then we're going to have a thin one down here. So I'm going to marquee select, hold control, marquee select, connect again. Make sure that's just a tiny bit thinner. Go OK. Okay, now it isn't in this tutorial, but I'm going to show you. I'm going to make the banisters a tiny bit thinner. And the way how I'm going to do this is by selecting the polygon. I'll show you on just one. And then I'm going to use the inset function. So here we've got the inset. I'm going to make sure it doesn't go too much. I just want it, so mine is on 0.301 centimeters. Press OK. It should remain the same for all the others. So if I click inset settings, yep, press OK. Do the same for these. OK. Okay. Now I'm gonna select these holes. Select the insets that we've made and press the delete key. Now here's another function that I'm gonna show you to do is bridging. We're gonna be using bridging a lot. So I'm gonna select the gap. So this is our first banister, our top bit, and then I'm gonna press the bridge settings, and you can see that it's completely closed the gap, and we have other functions that we will get into later to help manipulate or change things. So let's just press OK, and let's just do the same thing for the bottom one, bridge. Okay, now let's give this some shape. I'm gonna use the edge tool again, select across, and then use the connect settings. I want 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5. Okay, and then I'm gonna just use the edge, sorry, the vertex tool, and then bring these up like so. Yep. And I'm gonna bring these in. Connect. I don't want that much. I only want like 3. Let's move that back to 0, and then press OK. Then what I'm gonna do is bring this back a bit. Whoops. And select the vertex, select in, and bring it also back a bit. Let's bring that back a tiny bit. So you can see here I'm incrementally moving, just nudging them just to get a tiny bit of shape in, the tiniest bit of shape. Okay, and then we're going to do the same. We're going to just nudge the top. Yes, we could use a tool, so I'm just going to use rotation here. So I'm just going to rotate this back a bit. We can use a modifier, but I want you guys to understand that you can do this manually as well. Okay, and we're going to attach all this together from our original base. So I'm going to select the base, attach, and then select the legs and the backing. Yeah, and then right click, or you can see here it's highlighted on mine, attach. Click the attach again for it to go back. And to get out of isolation mode, we want to press here, so it's Alt plus Q again. And if that doesn't work, you press the isolation tab at the bottom, the square next to the lock. Now, for some reason, if anyone presses the the space bar on the keyboard, you'll realize that you would have locked your screen. You need to make sure, so let me show you here. So if I press the space bar, you can see my lock has turned yellow. That means it's on, and it will cut off some functions. So make sure you press the space bar or press the lock again to disable that. Okay, so what I have here now is a chair. I think my table needs to be a bit larger or taller. Yeah. I'm gonna select the legs. Under the legs, and then I'm gonna select under legs, and then I'm gonna right click for it to snap to 0, 0, 0. Okay. Okay, so we have a table and chair created. Next thing I want you to do, this is just so we can get a quick render, is make a plane. So we're gonna go to create, standard primitives, and plane. So I'm zooming out a tiny bit, and then I'm outside of the grid. I just want to create a box here. Make sure that it's centered. I'm going to convert that to editable poly straight away. Doesn't matter. Actually, listen up. Let's change the segments down to 1 because we don't need any. Make sure that it's centered. Convert to editable poly. Let me change the color so it's a bit more easier to see. Then what I'm going to do is with my edges, so these two sides, because my camera is going to be facing in this direction, I'm going to hold shift, so selecting the back edge and the side edge, just one of those. I'm going to hold shift and then drag up. to create the wall. Yeah, and then just click off of it. Now, what you realize when you rotate around your environment is that the walls have a backside to them. Uh, with all 3D polygons, there is only one side. 3ds Max and some other programs decide to show two sides just so it's not so confusing. But then what is happening is you would think that, okay, there's another side and the material or whatever should be on there, and it's not going to be. So the way how to rectify this or show it what you're doing is by, with whatever is selected, if you just want it to be a single side, you right click, go to the object's properties in the bottom right menu, and then you want to click or tick on the backface cull. Yeah, cull means to get rid of, to kill, to wipe out. Yeah, because there is no backface, and then we're going to press OK. Now when I rotate around, you can see that we can see our object through it, because this is a real representation of 3D. Okay, the next thing I want to do, now I have this, is I'm going to just put a gray matte on all of my objects. So to get in the material mode, I'm going to press M, and this slate menu will pop up. There is two menus, so there's a slate menu, or two modes I should say, and a standard or compact. So if we click on modes, go to compact, we'll see that we have our material editor in visible nodes rather than a hierarchy, a schematic view, sorry. So I'm not even going to pick a color, I'm just going to have everything selected. So you can select everything with Control and A. With the material selected, the top one, I am going to go down to the menu system and click on assign material to selection. Yep, and it's assigned this gray matte to everything. Now obviously here in the diffuse, we can click the diffuse, and because this is already selected or put on everything, we can come here and change the color, and you can see it will change on the fly. Yeah, but I'm going to keep mine to a bog standard gray for rendering purposes. Press OK. We can also name our materials, and there's a bunch of other stuff that we will get into later. Now I'm going to add a simple light in here, so I'm going to go to light, standard light, skylight, and then I'm going to click it down, so you can see that it's appeared. This grid or circular wireframe has appeared. That's our skylight. Then I'm gonna say cast shadows. Let me drop it to 15, so just so that the renders are a bit more faster. And if I press the render, because we set this up earlier, if I press the render production, so that's the teapot with the lightning bolt on it, I can start rendering out my view. Okay, while that is rendering, I'm gonna come around and see what you guys are doing, and if you need help. want these to be aligned to which axis do you think are wrong? Because this is your wrong key or something like that. I think that looks really weird in the type. What do you think in the X, Y, Z, which are we aligning to Y and X? Huh? Y and X. Y, Y and X. No, don't do it. I just want to take feedback. So that's all. You want to align it to the line X because it's going up this way and this way. I understand your logic of it, but it's wrong. So the X, so L, oh, you got it? So which one is it? Z, bingo. Because we want to get this straight here, so it all needs to be on the same, because the numbers go up from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we want to align it, all of these to the one thing in the Z axis. So if it was on the left and right, exactly, that's it. So we will go to the Z axis and watch it pop. See it pop on? Okay, so that bottom bit is aligned. Then we can go back to the border, and you can see what I selected is already still there. And then we can pull this out. So even like extrude and what I just did with the shift, exactly the same things, just different methods of doing it. Because one, I'm extruding the edges from an open hole down, and the other one, I'm extruding a polygon down. Jack,
Still hates me.
don't break the keyboard. Don't.
I'm not breaking anything, I'm fine. I wouldn't do that. I'm just having a bit of trouble.
But you see, we've got holes in here. Yes? The way how we get rid of our holes is you find a way to constrain by capping. Yeah? So the power, we create the cap. Yes? And then just to make sure that these are straight, because I'm going to use the monkey on purpose here. Just click here. You see that it's not even 0, 0, so 0.068. Yeah? You can right click and make sure that they are all that. That even that was longer than the other. No, it's the same 0.68. And this one, 0.7, boom. Now we are 100% certain that they are all standing at the same. They are perfectly the same size. Right? Yeah, you changed your axis pivot thing. Did you hold right click or hold and right click? And then see you've got it to local where it should be on wall. Why did you change that? We'll get into that later on. Okay, you're following along here.